So, you know, I heard many years ago that the United States, we don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. And, you know, I thought that was maybe a little cheeky and spent a little time thinking about it. But you know what? You're right. You know, somewhere along the way, we decided that healthcare happens within the four walls of the hospital. That's what healthcare is in the U.S. So my name is Michael Hollenbeck, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Proskriptive. Oh, can you not? Okay. Man, that is like the first time that I have ever been asked to speak up. Usually it's that. So, Proskriptive, we really hope to be an enabling technology to change this to a system of well-care, where we don't just think about healthcare in terms of what happens in a hospital, but long before we get to the hospital, long before we need the hospital, and long after we're discharged from the hospital. So we actually look at the hospital and say, man, if we let these folks get to the hospital, that is a failure of well care, because we weren't looking after the folks holistically. Now, there's a lot of laws, there's a lot of regulation that's going on right now that really enables this notion of, the technical name is value-based care. If I spend $1, I want $1 of value. Right now we have a volume-based system. So in that system, it promotes as many labs as possible. It promotes as many x-rays as possible. It promotes efficiency and a number of other things. So if you look at the Affordable Care Act and Obamacare and the things that it does, love it or hate it, one thing that it absolutely does is to change the system so that we are aligning incentives behind keeping people healthy. But you know what? The technology hasn't kept up with that. The technology is about driving volume. It's about protecting, you know, this group of patients for a specific, you know, physician or hospital. So here's what Proskriptive does. Proskriptive is a data science company for healthcare, and we are focused on value-based care. That means that we utilize these really cool algorithms. Who's familiar with data science or algorithms? If I say that, does that resonate with anybody? Okay. By the way, are you hearing me in the background? Okay. So, anybody know what a credit score is? Probably a few of us, right? Sorry, Norris.
I had the only negative score.
He scored a -3. So that's a great example of predictive analytics used in a way that we all recognize. It looks at your past details, it looks at your past history, how long have you been in your job, how long have you been in your home, how are you paying your bills, and it comes up with this magic score to say, oh, there you go, this is your credit worthiness. Now, 97% of all credit decisions are based upon a credit score. Anybody use Amazon? And you know, you're looking at your Chia Pet, and it says, oh hey, the people who like Chia Pets also like this, and then it gives you a whole bunch of stuff that you should look at. Those are all examples of predictive analytics applied, and it just continues to permeate it. Like if I go to an e-commerce site and they don't have a recommendation engine, I'm like, what kind of this is cut-rate crap. I don't want to use this. I mean, show me the things I want to know. If I go like Netflix and it doesn't tell me, you know, like, how am I going to like this? You know, those are the types of things that are really, you know, we have become very used to. Now, healthcare, ironically, doesn't have a similar notion. I mean, the most important thing that we can do is to help people stay healthy, help people minimize the costs, and give them great tools in order to understand how they go about staying healthy. So that is what Proskriptive is doing. We are providing data science in support of well care to identify opportunities, identify people who need help before they even know they need help, and to make sure that the people who are responsible for their care know that too, and they know it early. And not only that, they know what they can do about it. And that is the mission of Proskriptive. So I know that I have 6 minutes, and I don't know how much more of that, but that's an introduction to Proskriptive. That is what we do. I understand is the second question. I'm also supposed to share a little bit about, my travels and perhaps what you can learn from me. Proskriptive is startup number 5 for me. It isn't, not that I've been the CEO of them, I've been the CEO of 2 of them, but Proskriptive is number 5 for me. Of the last 20 years of my professional career, 17 of them have been in startups. I did enjoy 3 years working for Microsoft when ProClarity, the startup that we did early on, was acquired, which was a great experience. So in terms of startups, I feel like I've logged a little bit of mileage. And Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, I kind of feel like I got a few of my hours in. So 5 startups. I've helped raise over $37 million for startups that I've been associated with. So I think that I can share with you knowledge about how to fund, how to position yourself for funding. I think that I can share with you what you do. I mean, what's the reality of a startup? I think we all read, Fast Company, and we like to look at TechCrunch's like unicorn scoreboard and dream. But the reality is that you have to have a great deal of intestinal fortitude to make this work. There's a real reason that 80% of these things fail. Because you know what? It's hard. Like, this shit, guys, is hard. I mean, it is hard, and it requires you to wake up every day when things aren't going your way and you're thinking about, oh my God, how am I going to pay payroll? And how am I going to, and where am I going to get that? You really, really have to have that intestinal fortitude to know that you would rather be doing this than anything else in the world. And if there's something that I can share with you, it's how you wake up, every day to do that. And then sales. Sales is my jam. Because, what's that?
We noticed.
Well, if you're going to be the CEO of a company, you're going to be a salesperson whether you want to be or not. I mean, you're the chief cheerleader. You do everything that needs to be done. And, a good friend of mine said, you know what? Nothing happens until something gets sold. And we can all be super smart, we have great ideas, but nothing happens until we sell some shit. And so, how do you do that? And that, by the way, I mean, that's my forte. So I've spent a lot of times doing that. And then,
I'd say that is, that's a great jumping off. I'm just noticing people like starting to do, this. Do anybody want questions? Anybody got a burning question? You don't really want me to be one asking the questions. So, Jasper.
So what is it? What kind of 2 or 3 tips could you give to an entrepreneur to make them say, this is why I live, this is what I want to do? How do you get through the doubts, right? Going forward.
The last company that I worked for, I had the pleasure of working with 2 Olympic athletes. Okay, and one of them was the captain of the U.S. volleyball team that took gold in Beijing, and he'd been to 3 Olympics, and the other, our CEO of the company, had been to 2 Olympics. There is one thing that I learned from those folks is, number one, I will tell you, they were not the best athletes. But I have never seen work ethic. I have never seen focus. I have never seen stripping away the bullshit and focusing on the core of what drives success. And just this tedious, constant, I'm going to outwork you, I'm going to out-hustle you, and I'm going to be really smart about where I apply my time. Because here's the thing, it is super easy to dedicate your time to stuff that does not matter. And so, every time, by the way, guys, this is Elsa McDonald. She's our VP of Sales and Marketing at Proskriptive. She makes the stuff work at Proskriptive. But every time I start an executive discussion, the question I ask is, what are we going to quit doing? What are we going to quit doing? Because at this early stage, you've got to be learning about things that drive your business, and you've got to ask yourself, what doesn't drive my business? And you literally have to quit doing them.
Can you give us an example of that, of something that seemed important but you realized was bullshit and needed to be stripped away?
When we started Proskriptive, so with the data science, the question is, how do you consume data science? Like, how do you consume a FICO score? You know, we can do really super cool, predictive thingies, but until I embed it in a Netflix, until I have a little star thing, until I am, using a recommendation engine on a website, it's just an algorithm that sits somewhere. It has to be embedded in a workflow. And so our journey thus far has been how do people consume predictive analytics in healthcare? And how do we streamline that? How do we embed it? How do we make it part of what they do? And you know what? We've been wrong. We've been wrong about how people are consuming it. But we are really, really good at learning. We are really good at focusing up on, okay, who out there has done this? Who's done it right? Who's done it wrong? How do we learn that? And so one of the things that we decided was the metaphor for consuming predictive analytics that we were focused on was wrong. We quit doing it, and we have refocused on a better way and what we think is going to be really a great way of consuming it.
Which is what? What's the platform to get it to the consumer so that they can see their own predictive recommendations?
So,
What's the questions?
can you?
The question is how are you getting that data and information to the consumer so they can see the predictions that the software is recommending?
Okay, so with it, and by the way, did everybody hear that question? Okay, the question is, so how do you embed predictive analytics in a healthcare scenario so that people will consume that? How do you do that? And I think that embedded in your question is this other question: who is your consumer? And you have to understand who the consumer is, because it needs to go in multiple places, and you can't think of, there's not a ubiquitous persona in terms of the consumer. And so in our world, we talk about population health managers, we talk about care providers, and then we talk about patients. And so there's a different avenue for each one of those that we consume. And I will give you a much better answer after the session if you want to talk about that.
Well, I guess a follow-up. Do you guys already have something? I haven't looked at your app or website, so I'm not familiar with it. But do you have something that's already working in beta that doctors or patients are already using?
We have something that's working in beta that doctors and population health managers are using. However, I think there's an opportunity for us to be far more resonant, and that's what we're going for.
Oh, Gary, then Billy.
Michael.
Hey, Gary.
My question is, and it's kind of related, I think, to what you're talking about, is do you have a medical subject matter expert on your team? If so, what role do they play? If not, how do you compensate for not having that in-depth subject matter knowledge?
So it's an excellent question. We don't have a medical, an MD on our staff today. That being said, there's two things that I draw upon. Number one, we do have an MD advisory board, and guys, I love my MDs, I love them, but 85% of what we need is not from them. And matter of fact, one of my favorite customers, who's the president of a local medical group that we all know and visit when we get our boo-boos, he said, you know what, I would have never guessed that I needed a bunch of nerds to come in here and help me understand how to deliver medicine better. So there's a tip for Tad on that. What we're trying to do is to identify opportunities. We can look at the data and we can say, here's where your cost, here's where your variation is, and we can very effectively identify those opportunities and identify where the prospective opportunities are. But where the MDs really come in is, what do I do about that? What's my care plan? What's my next step? And we are well advised on that topic.
Jolene, and then
what kind of introductions can we provide that would help Proskriptive?
Oh, thank you. That's right. We're playing some t-ball. So the introductions are priceless for me. I can tell you that the introductions that I've been given by community members, you know, the mayor, so many other folks, that literally is what has driven our business. If you know anybody who's in the healthcare field, you know, who's actually the care provider, maybe they're a healthcare organization, those folks are invaluable. You know, when you're in a startup, you know, I used to think that you fund in rounds. Like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, between June and August, I'm fundraising. No, you're always fundraising, all right? So anybody who is, you know, anybody who is interested in supporting great startups financially, I certainly want to know those folks. Julie, maybe you know a few of them.
Just a few hundred.
That's
By the way, if you haven't signed in at the desk, please do that. And to this point, also, you know, leave your name, your email, and the PIN number to your debit card.
exactly right. And before I move beyond that, so there's the selfish. Who can you introduce me to? You can introduce me to people who are in the healthcare profession who are trying to solve big problems. You can introduce me to people who have computer science degrees, are about ready to get them, who want to do very smart things, who want to work for an exciting company and do cool things. I want to know those guys too.